I'm Chad Ruthermans,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, the stuff dreams are made of. Today, we're going to be talking about Splatoon 3 Side Order, a game that was developed by Nintendo EPD, published by Nintendo, and was released in 2024 on the Nintendo Switch.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
Welcome to a string of 4 episodes in which we're talking about DLC to games, 3 of which are games that we have talked about before on the podcast, and one of which, this one, is for a game that for all intents and purposes we have talked about on the podcast, but have not officially talked about on the podcast.
Right.
So yeah, Splatoon Side Order is the DLC in a similar vein to the Octo expansion from Splatoon 2. It is a paid DLC that features single-player content and is intended as sort of like a follow-on to the main story of the primarily online multiplayer shooter game Splatoon.
Yeah. So I guess one of the thoughts I had upon first starting this, like I actually it came out so long after I stopped playing the game, I kind of kept just forgetting it existed. But upon booting it up, I was like, I feel like this, like I know the main campaigns are good at teaching the mechanics, which is why I think they've stuck to the same format for all 3 games. But like upon starting it, I was like, man, I really wish the main game's campaign had like a big shakeup like this, where it was like a different format, because like just like making it a roguelite, I think made it feel really fresh to me.
Stay fresh.
Yeah, stay fresh.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to me because like they changed a bit in Octo expansion. Like Splatoon 2's DLC was a like level-based challenge thing, but so was the main campaign largely. They changed it slightly in terms of like you had the way that you chose your weapons for each one, like, and how they scored you and wherever, and also they increased the difficulty by a huge margin compared to the base DLC or the base game. In Side Order, yeah, they changed it entirely to a roguelite. It still plays, I would say, similarly to the levels in Octo expansion, but the format of the whole thing, the layout, is entirely different, and I want to say just very interesting in a way, and I'll get into sort of like each of the details as it goes on, but like this is obviously like a kind of inspired by recent successes like roguelite. They did their homework on it. How do you make Splatoon into an accessible roguelite game? And I think succeeded in a weird way that I agree. I wish they would have done more to sort of like spice up the other single player content in the game.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about because Nintendo, at least like in the Wii U generation especially, really felt like a bunch of old men who were really set in their ways and didn't want to change anything. But
Yeah.
like, they like, I feel like really tried to branch out but only with like certain franchises. It feels like they'll let the Zelda team do weird experimental stuff, and like Splatoon seems to be worked on by like younger people, I think. So they try like more different things, and it's like, yeah, it is really interesting to see them try this because I don't think they would with just any franchise that they have.
Yeah, and I didn't like scour the credits of Side Order, but I know that the director of Splatoon is also the director of the more recent Animal Crossing games, which is another game series that sort of like had a big hit recently, and they did like the spin-off mobile game that operates in a different way. And while the mobile game is very shit, you can see them sort of like trying to push into what are ostensibly like newer trends in the games industry, more so than like Animal Crossing has been in the past, and shooters have been. Like Splatoon obviously did its own take on that. So Yeah, I agree. There is seemingly a team within Nintendo that is trying to sort of like push and catch up with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, because like I feel like I'm used to thinking of it as like they're gonna try and do like a more modern thing, but they're gonna do it with Mario, and they're gonna do it like in a really safe, only do it kind of halfway sort of thing, and then it won't do well, and then they'll never do it again. Like with like Mario Run or something. When they first started to do mobile games. So yeah, so I'm glad to see them actually like do stuff like this successfully.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And also, I just wanted to, I don't know if this is like I was talking about this a little bit before. One of the other episodes that we're doing for DLC is on the expansion campaign for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Mm-hmm. And I started that, but it was the way that and also Splatoon did this, so you can draw a slight parallel here as well. Splatoon put out Side Order as part of an expansion pass, and our first initial introduction into the expansion pass is content that nobody should really care much about. It allowed you to go to the Inkopolis Plaza, and I think had some like cosmetic or gear based rewards for getting it. But then Xenoblade did a similar thing, which when you look at the scope of Xenoblade 3, it's like the first 3 expansion things were very obviously just like buying time for the whole new game that they were adding to it.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the second game.
Yeah. And but the third thing they put out is also a roguelite.
No,
and I had no idea.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah, they put it like a roguelite. They call it the gauntlet into the challenge area. And I thought it was really... I'm glad, obviously, that we're doing the part that's an RPG and not the part that's a roguelike, because this would be a little weird.
Yeah.
But it's already weird that 2 of these games had roguelikes added to them in the last year.
Monolith Soft is thanked in the credits for this, so I wonder if that has anything to do with it. It probably doesn't.
They were sharing some ideas, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it seems like Nintendo just falls back on Monolith Soft to do support for like all of their games, because like I know they helped with Zelda, and apparently they helped with this too, and I think with Pokemon, and like et cetera, et cetera.
That makes some sense. Yeah. We can talk more about Monolith Soft next time. Actually, well, kind of. You decide. So yeah, this is a roguelike, and it is a roguelike that I want to say takes obvious question mark. It does anything qualify as not taking inspiration from Hades post Hades? Like it follows a very similar format where at the end of a stage you get to choose a room where it previews the challenge ahead of you and tells you what reward you're going to get. Then you perform a short combat room. I don't know about you, but I think they averaged between like 15 seconds to a minute roughly per room. And then you choose a reward for the next room, and ad nauseum, and with bosses in between certain acts, culminating in which can change, but culminating in a final boss that is always the same. So, like, basically, if you know the Hades structure, it's exactly that.
I might just be showing my ignorance, but like, was that specifically like a Hades format? Like, I just assumed that was already what the genre of roguelites was like.
I think that's a fair. The way, I won't speak for it as like 100%, but the choosing like your next room and reward thing, it was something that Hades popularized, because like roguelikes prior to roguelites, like things where you get stronger, like
and you keep some of the rewards.
Yeah, really started with like Rogue Legacy, but was not really a popular genre until post Hades, which is honestly underselling it. Lots of people did like these games. But if you look at games like Binding of Isaac, you unlocked new things that you could find in runs, but like you never started stronger.
Right.
So it was always like a different sort of thing. And this is like a very Hades style of game, which there are now lots of.
Yeah. One thing I really liked about this format was like you got to pick the chip in the room that you were going to go for, and you get the chip before you start the level and not after.
Right.
I really like that because it lets you it lets you make use of it. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was like a interesting twist.
Yeah, I thought about this as well because I was thinking about it in terms of like, this is actually the same either way that you slice it. Like the first thing that happens in Hades is you get a boon for free.
Right.
Like it's the first thing in the room. And then you get them at the end of each room that you go to. So you're getting them at exactly the same pace as if you were getting them beforehand. But getting them beforehand feels like you are like making a real choice.
Yeah.
In a way. Like
it's almost kind of like that. It's different than this, but I feel like it's like a player psychology thing. And I apologize for bringing up Dark Souls once again, ladies and gentlemen. But like how like in Demon Souls, like if you died, you would get put into soul form and you'd have less HP. So it frames it as a negative. But then in Dark Souls 3, you have your set HP, and then if you go embered, you get bonus HP. It's actually the same mechanic, but they're just like flipping it. So they're framing it one as a positive and one as a negative. And you don't even think of it yourself as being handicapped in Dark Souls 3 because essentially it isn't framed like that. So I think it has a similar like player psychology thing where like you pick it beforehand and you feel like you get to use it. So even if you lose on that stage, you don't feel like, I don't know, I feel like it takes some of the sting out. You're like, oh, I liked that one, I want to go for it again. You know,
right,
etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of like, I agree with that like player psychology read. Like that was the thing, because a lot of times like in when you're playing a game where you get the rewards at the end of the challenge, you like pick the reward based, like you will take a risk for a better reward by giving you the reward up front before you take the big risk. I think is the biggest actual mechanical difference. And it feels a lot different. Like you go for those rigorous rooms when there's a juicy double chip option to take. And you're like, I know that going into this, I'm going to be stronger than I was. And maybe it'll make me more likely to to win the challenge.
Yeah, like if you're going for an attack boost chip, it can feel like you won the room because you got that chip, and that feels really good if you perceive it that way.
Yeah, it's great. And I do agree. I think this is actually a good option and something that, and I'm not saying that no one else has done it. I have not played a game that does it as of right now.
Same.
So most likely there are games that do this kind of thing, but at the same time, like I do like this format. And it made a bigger impact on the way that I thought about it than I would have ever guessed for like what a minor, like I said, like it's almost identical to the way that doing it reversed is. But it did make a bigger impact than I thought it would.
So I guess, do you want to talk about the difficulty or like the amount of variety on hand? Those are two of my big notes.
Oh, so this is like I have to choose the room.
Yeah. You get to pick the room, but you get to do it beforehand.
Yeah, I think we talk about the variety first. I think difficulty is going to be kind of a bigger thing, I would say, and then we can jump into that later. So, so you said it was one of your bigger notes. So what do you think about? Do you think it was not variety filled enough?
Yeah, I feel like for the length of it, and I think it kind of ties into the difficulty because it's only took me 4 runs to beat. So I think it actually went over like a little bit more positively for me. But like if this was a little bit harder and it took more tries to beat, like I think the amount of variety on hand would be too little. Because there's like 5 different types of challenges, and I don't know how many room types, but like playing through it most of the way 4 times, I felt like I was seeing mostly repeat rooms on the 3rd and 4th runs. So it felt like it was like just enough for like how long it took me to beat it. But like your mileage may vary.
Right. Okay, in that case, you're right. Let's start with the difficulty. Because I do agree with you, I think, by and large. I will say, and maybe I'm just like built differently.
You are.
In terms of, yeah, we have determined there are many things that we do differently than the other one that seem like fundamental differences, but really aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, I beat this, I beat it on my 3rd attempt. And then I proceeded to beat it 11 more times
With
to
all
clear
the
the rest of the pallets. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did finish, like, so the way that the game functions, like, in a grand scheme is once you've beaten the first, your first go, then each time that you make it to the boss, there's, like, slightly different dialogue. And it tells like a longer story. Mm-hmm. And the moment that I realized that was happening, I was like, well, I guess I have to beat it with every weapon.
Yeah, I mean, that is cool. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's definitely like that. What do you call it? Extrinsic motivation or intrinsic, whichever one.
Extrinsic. So it's you're being motivated by the game rather than yourself.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I find that kind of stuff motivating as well.
Yeah, so I was like, I'll go through it and complete it with every weapon because it wasn't because I beat that 3rd try. I was like, this is easy as fuck, and then I proceeded to die on like the following 2 in a row, and I was like, oh fuck. But it turns out I just sucked with the weapon that I was being given. And then eventually, like, I built up. And I ended up coming back with a few weapons. Like, there were a few that I lost along the way. But I think I couldn't have run this more than 20 times to complete with everything. And so it ends up being a pretty short experience, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. Like, it's even if you complete everything, the difference in time is, I mean, it's substantial, but it's not so substantial that you would say, like, oh, this needed... if it held up for the first one, it probably holds up for the last one. But I do agree. I think the variety, when you go through it so many times, especially, it gets like... It's weird because I would run into rooms that still had the question mark names.
Right.
But they would just be like rooms I've been in with a different challenge or the other way around. I think I went into like... Yeah, and I ran into like one ever that was like a different... thing completely that I don't think has another has any other challenges on it, and it was like easy challenge in the 3rd stage, which is why you never see it, because on the 3rd stage you're never taking easy challenges essentially. So but to me, I didn't really sense like what happened is I started learning what the rooms were, and then I just started avoiding the ones that I thought sucked. And so just winning was enough for me to not get sick of it, because I was like, oh, good, this is one that I can easily beat and not worry about. Whereas like this one has a tendency to like completely fuck me over because I'd been through them enough times. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm at with it. I thought that the variety was fine for the relatively short length of the game.
Right.
But I also think that you need to be sort of like motivated by winning.
Right.
More so than novelty, which is a troublesome leg for a roguelite to stand on.
Yeah, I think what you just said there kind of like therein lies the problem in my head anyway. It's like you described it as a short experience. And it does feel that way, and I think the variety is like a reason why. Because I think like I don't know how much longer it would take, but like it feels like you could like double the amount of variety in it, and the longevity I think would go up a lot. Because like I think like the roguelite genre is one that people want to play over and over. So it's more missed opportunity. Like I didn't get sick of it either. It just feels like it's like very much in danger of getting there very quickly for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my last statement there was signaling. It's like, I think that if you just play it to win, like get to the end of the story, it will be fine. But if you want to continue playing the game to unlock everything, or if you are a fucking lunatic just grinding out meta currency to buy the gear to send back to the main game. And I say that knowing that somebody listening may be that person.
Yeah,
and I mean,
JJ.
hey, if you like it, you like it. Yeah, I'll be like, yeah, I actually played through 400 times. That, like, then it definitely is problematic. Like, it just is not enough shit to allow for that kind of repetition. And yeah, that would be a problem, I think, if the context of the game wasn't so extremely weird.
Yeah.
Which brings me to one of my points, which is that I think that I thought that this game was a pretty good roguelite.
Yeah.
Like, one that I would recommend to somebody who liked roguelikes. Like, I have friends who play roguelikes a lot, and I'd be like, Splatoon's roguelike is pretty cool. And then here are my other things. And they'd be like, oh, how do I play it? It's like, well, you have to purchase the $60 video game Splatoon 3, which you don't want to play. And then the expansion pass, and then
you have to pay
can
$30
play
more
the
for
roguelike.
that.
Which is crazy. It's like fucking Bowser's Fury, where it's just like an add-on to a different game that is itself a fully different game than the one that you bought.
Yeah. There's another page they could take out of the Monolith Soft catalog where they sold the expansions to Xenoblade 2 and 3 as their own separate games, which is weird. Honestly, a good decision, but also feels kind of weird that you would pay like $40 for like a 8-hour RPG in the 2020s. That used to be a normal thing on like the PlayStation 2, but
that's true. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that was like the reason that was done. I'm wrong about this now that I'm saying it out loud, because fucking Xenoblade 2 was on the Switch exclusively.
Yeah,
I was like, they sold the expansion for Xenoblade 1 on the Switch because it is like it wouldn't have been available. But then that's also wrong because the Xenoblade 1 expansion came with the Switch version of the game.
Right, yeah. And the expansion to my knowledge, was not sold separately.
Right. So basically everything about all of these games is very weird.
Yeah.
Like
at least,
they have their content strategy is fucking bizarre.
Yeah, it's like it feels like this side order was like very much like an experimental proof of concept. It's just like the fact that it worked out so well, like makes you wish, like, oh, I wish they would have like made it into like more of a full game.
Right. Are we going to be getting the side order version of Treasure Tracker?
Yeah, like
in
a
the
spin-off.
future?
Yeah. Because I could see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I hope so. This lag today is wild.
Yeah.
So if we talk over each other, that's why.
Yeah, even more than usual.
Right. Yeah. So to talk more about like and we can get back into some of the other stuff pertaining to like difficulty and shit in a second. But to talk about sort of like the roguelike elements of this game, I want to call out the one thing that holds me back from being like, this is just like a great roguelike, is I found that the way that they handled upgrades was like just not synchronous enough for me to like really love it. Because it's not like most of the upgrades that you get are like essentially just the gear abilities that you get in the main game. And then like a whole subsection that are dedicated to the drone, which we can talk about in a second. But that is like, to me, those don't like have synergy in the way that I like in a roguelike. I want like, this makes you deal poison damage. And then like another one that says, if you're dealing poison damage, also do fire damage or something. Like stuff that like builds upon each other. So there were very few of those, and the ones that did exist were very boring. It was like, make explosions bigger and deal more explosion damage.
Right.
It's like, okay, it's kind of, I don't have to use my brain at all to put those two things together. There's never a moment where I was like, oh, wow, this works really well in this scenario. It was always just getting more stuff was always good.
Yeah.
And weirdly, it sort of like has this emphasis on getting the same shit. If you get more of the same shit, you'll do better than getting a variety of things. So that was kind of my biggest problem as far as like the actual gameplay loop went.
Yeah. I figured that would be a thing that you'd dislike. Like, you can't really make a build. And like to me felt kind of like EV training Pokemon. It was like, you want to pick like one thing and get really good at that.
Right. You're 100% correct. That's what it is. Because when you like break it down, there are two builds in the game. There is make your main weapon very strong.
Yeah.
And completely ignore your main weapon completely and just put everything into the drone. Because the drone is insanely broken, and I would say that if I were to rate this on a difficulty scale, I would say playing through the game trying to focus on your main weapon is like a difficulty scale that makes sense because you are slowly sort of getting better over time and then hopefully reaching those like points of just broken, doing too much damage too quickly by the end. And then the drone is like, your drone is immediately better than anything you could ever hope to achieve in your life. And then that's it. And then you can just ignore it for the rest of the game and it will win for you. Like, it's so easy when you're focusing on drone that I took kind of an issue with that and tried to avoid it as I like played through the game repeatedly. I don't know if you quite got to the level of repetition to realize that.
No, not at all. I tended to ignore the drone power-ups. This is a classic me thing where I'm like, I gotta go with the attack up. Like, I'm such like a basic bitch when it comes to this kind of stuff. That like the drone upgrades always feel like, oh, I'll grab one of those. Like if it's like, oh, the splat bomb upgrade for the drone. I like it when she throws bombs, so I'm gonna take that one. But that would be like the drone ones. I think were like the teal or like aqua colored ones. So I would have like maybe 3 of those in my palette by the end.
Yeah, I kind of started that way. So there's a meta ability that you can pick up. The meta abilities in this game are called hacks. That is your mirror. That is your I forget what other roguelikes call their in-game like things. Basically, like you get a currency, like a meta currency, and then you spend it to unlock things that permanently change the run. So one of the hacks is color bias, and I just ignored it for a long time because I said, I don't want color bias. I want to play around and see what things synergize together. And then, like, a third of the way through, I discovered nothing does. Just get the color bias, and everything will go better. And so I got the levels in color bias, which are really cheap. It's obvious that they wanted you to get them. And like not getting them is just like a way of nerfing yourself. And so I got those and started a new run, and it happened. There's some weapons that have like, well, all weapons have a bias, and that's what it feeds off of. So it says this is an attack bias weapon. You'll get more attack power-ups if you have the upgrade. But some of them are drone things. And so the very first one that I went to after buying that was a drone thing. And that's basically when I discovered that the drone is extremely overpowered. When you get like drone splat bomb, it has a meter, like a special meter, like in the game, like in Splatoon 3, the shooter game, that fills up over time. And then after the time limit is done, it automatically deploys a splat bomb. And by default, it fills up at like 6 points per second, and a splat bomb is like 240 points at level 1. So it takes like several minutes, and then it throws one splat bomb by default.
Right.
There are power-ups that make it tick up faster, and there's a power-up that you can buy that allows you to find chips that make it go by turf, so how much you ink fills it up, more similar to Splatoon 3, the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's one that's called Splat Drone Charge, which whenever you kill something, it fills up by, at level 1, 30 points. The way that the game becomes harder is they just throw more enemies at you.
Right.
You will literally be drowning in splat bombs at level 1 of that, and the splat bombs count toward filling the drone gauge again.
Okay.
So every time that those kill something, so it just completely fucking like eats itself.
Bomb rush.
To the point where, yeah, you just like get splat bombs and ink strike and get a 1 copy of Splat Drone Charge, and you have won the game. You don't have to worry about it from that point on. Just start putting stuff in to help you survive the final boss, and you've won. It was I've just realized that I've been going for like fucking 5 minutes on this. I was very distraught by how strong the drone was. And that's it. That's my thing on the drone, and I wish that it was worse than it is.
In a different context than that, I think the drone is a really cool idea. I would like to see it or something similar in. I assume we're getting a Splatoon 4, and that it will have a story mode. Like, I'd like to see a drone-like mechanic in that, because like it letting you hover, and like the fact that it just is Pearl and talks to you. Like it was like a cool implementation of like a sidekick character, and it had like interesting mechanical benefits. So yeah, I really liked what that added, like just like flavor wise.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it did a good job, and aside from being tremendously overpowered, is a positive addition overall. I liked what they did. So I don't like the lack of synergy, but I do like the way that they built the challenges around different elements of your kit. So like there are obvious places, like the levels obviously are like you would in any game are built around what you can do, but then there are challenges that show up mid-game that will like tweak it so that things are way different than you would imagine. Like there's a danger tag that can appear on rooms that increases the amount of money you get when you choose it. And it like there's one that I always dreaded getting, which is no drone, because the drone is very powerful. But a consequence of the no drone thing is that you can't hover either. So you'll like jump off of a ledge and then just plummet straight down and go like, oh, oops, I should have remembered that. So like, yeah, I like the way that they sort of build around it. And I like the fact that the drone did more than just be an ability. Yeah. Like it had narrative consequence. It had, I should be saying she, because it is Pearl. But it had like other mechanical implementations, and it has like story implementation.
Yeah. You want to talk about that story?
Yeah.
So I actually completely forgot about this until I watched a review. But this is like loosely like inspired by the final Splatfest for Splatoon 2, which was Order versus Chaos. Yeah. Like I had completely forgotten about that. So I think that's really awesome. Like I think like a real world event dictating the story of a later in-game piece of content is interesting, even though it's not like particularly, like interestingly done or anything. But I just think it's cool. So like you get like sucked into like essentially like a cyber world that's all like colorless. Which is interesting. I like that I think it's like themed around the thing that I think it's like a lowland Corsola is themed after, like this colorless coral. So that's also really cool. And I like the whole like intro to it. Like, you go in and it's like got this whole like mystery to like what's going on, and you play the first 10 stages and then it rolls the intro credits. Like, I like it how it's like a fake out ending,
Right.
and then it starts the real thing. So like, I think the presentation for what it is like fantastic, but I guess that's true of all the Splatoon games. But continuing to bat 1,000.
Yeah, I do want to like call out like the art direction is actually just really good. There's like a certain like everything is very colorful in the Splatoon games. That is like almost the design
Ethos.
like ethos for the games is like these are colorful things. And it's great to see how they sort of applied that to I mean, they did this in the story mode to some extent as well, right? Like there were the areas that were completely white. But I think the art direction in the DLC is extremely cool as well, for a similar reason. But yeah, otherwise, I did remember. It makes me very happy that Chaos won the final Splatfest. Not just because it means that I won the final Splatfest, but this DLC is extremely cool in the way that it is themed because of it.
Yeah. I can only imagine what the Chaos version would have been like. But no, I also like. I think one thing about the base game of Splatoon 3 that stood out to me was it felt weird, like the lack of Pearl and Marina, so, like in the game at all. Like the story mode just featured Callie and Marie again.
Right.
So yeah, it was good to see them show back up, and it made me realize that like I think Pearl is just my favorite character.
Yeah, I like Pearl a lot more now. I've never been like a Splatoon narrative head.
Yeah.
I'm not like a guy who like plays the Splatoon games and then is like, I really like how these characters are interacting or whatever. I do like them in the sense that I like
They're like
fun mascot characters.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Jinx.
exactly. And like that is why I like the characters in Splatoon, and I do like now that Pearl and Marina are like fully just in a lesbian relationship. Does make me like care about them more.
They're the
like because
most-
before
yeah.
it felt very like fan headcanon-y, and now it's like very explicit.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I feel like Callie and Marie are very much mascot, like Japanese idols, like to themselves a little bit more, like keep like a front and are like their personalities aren't on like Front Street.
Right.
And Fry and Shiver are just a little bit more boring. I don't know. I felt like they didn't try to me with the newer characters. But then I think Pearl and Marina like just have the most characterization.
Yeah.
They're just the most fun. Like it's a classic a comedy setup as old as time, but it's just like Marina's the straight man and Pearl is the goofball. But it really
Right.
works.
Yeah, and I mean to speak on that, like the way that, because I don't know that Nintendo had any idea like how much Splatoon was going to like work within its audience. Like the people who like Splatoon generally really like Splatoon, and Callie and Marie have like a uniform. They're dressed the same.
Yeah.
As like pop idols, whereas the newer characters are not. Like they recognize that as sort of a mistake that kept their personalities from actually working and designed them to be visually very different going forward. And I think it has worked in both games much better than it did in the original. So yeah, I think I agree with you pretty much across the board on that. I don't really find Shiver and Fry to be boring, but I don't find them to be very exciting.
Yeah,
I'm very mid.
They just don't. They aren't as memorable, or at least to me.
True.
Like they just don't stand out as much.
I mean, that's why we have Big Man.
Yeah,
Big
well,
Man
I
is
think-
there to try and help.
Big Man is also very likable, but like I think he's the same way. Like I don't find him. I don't know what his personality is like. You know, like.
Right.
Maybe it's because of the fact I don't know. I'm not a narrative writer,
marine biologist,
or a marine biologist. But there's something about the way they're characterized that I think just makes them kind of forgettable.
Yeah, that's fair.
Cool visual,
but I do also agree that Pearl and Marina though are the best. Like I think we can agree on that. So I'm glad to see them sort of take center stage here. Also, they kind of had to because it is the results of the final game, Splatfest of the game that they were in.
Right,
is the one that sort of dictated this. So I don't have that much else. Did you have strong opinions about the bosses?
I don't know if I'd say I had strong opinions. Like I thought they were very enjoyable though. There's something I don't know if it was like. I just kind of felt like they figured out the design process for designing Splatoon bosses really well. Like all of them felt like engaging and like I don't know, like there was like a good back and forth. Like it felt like there were parts where like they definitely like put the heat on you where you had to kind of run away and like parts where you could jump back in. Like I don't know, they just felt like really well designed to me. So yeah. I like them.
I really like the fact that all of them were bosses that even if like you were able to beat them on your first go around, they were still bosses that had stuff in them that you could learn. Like you could like pick up strategies to make them go faster or things that you could do to just make the fight better for you. Like as an example, like if you looked at like my first clear time for the elusive bounder, the guy that like is in a big sphere, yeah, that one was like my first clear was probably like over 5 minutes on that, and then my final clear on that boss was like 35 seconds. Like the amount that it like improved as I continued to play the game was actually insane. Which I think also means that if I continued to play and the time it shaved off became less and less every time, that's less enjoyable. I'm glad that the game ends where it does. But I will say that the one boss that I don't like is the one that's just like a fight against other Inklings, Octolings, whatever. Like the whatever Harmony, I forget the name of the boss. That one just is boring. And by boring, I mean sometimes it's incredibly hard and other times it's very easy. Much like any time that they do this kind of thing. I've played Splatoon for like more than 1,000 hours at this point, like between all the games. I'm like relatively used to the way that human players move in that game. These fuckers just like teleport, right. I'm pretty sure. And it makes it like, it feels so different than playing against an actual person that it makes me feel like the sort of design ethos is lost in that.
So I think that the boss that is supposed to emulate like playing a multiplayer match.
Right.
Like I like it because that's what it is. Like I like the idea of like trying to emulate the main game. Like I agree the AI is weird. It's like they're trying to make it emulate a real person by like making unpredictable decisions and stuff, but it does feel off. But yeah, I found that if I stayed on the platform in the middle, they like couldn't do anything about it, and it made it pretty easy. So I don't think I ever lost to that one, but
they were the first boss that I lost to in the game, but that I think that may have been the only time. Yeah. That being said, like
they're really bad at dodging splat bombs.
That's true. That's the thing. Like the one thing that doesn't do right is make their movement and like your ability to hit them with your main weapon just doesn't feel right. The other thing that doesn't feel right is that anything that is easily avoidable in Splatoon the game, they will just immediately die to.
Yeah.
Which is wild. Like there's like a drone ability that lets them use Killer Whale. and they will just stand right in that shit and explode, like no questions asked.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the execution leaves something to be desired, but I really like the concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent concept. I guess like my biggest problem with it is just the fact that it's like something we've seen before in Splatoon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say one of the things I do like about the bosses globally is that they can show up on either the floor 10 or floor 20 boss stage. And there's like a slight variation to them in like what abilities they'll have and or like how aggressive they'll be. Based on when they show up. So that is cool. I think that's a good idea.
I don't know. Any thoughts about the final boss?
I think the final boss is probably too easy, but I also think that kind of the whole game is a little bit too easy. Like in a roguelike, you kind of want it to be a challenge to surmount each time. That way you have like until like you're reaching the points of being like obviously overpowered, and the final boss is just like kind of you get to it, and I think I died to it. I died to it one time because I did not understand how a move worked, and I think that is the only. No, I've died to it twice. I'll talk about the second time once this conversation is over.
Okay. I also died to the final boss. Like I made it to him on my third run. And the move he uses that's like the special where you slide out on the vehicle and then it explodes.
The reef slider.
The reef slider. I did a bad job at figuring out how to dodge that. And then felt really dumb because I made it to the final boss again on the fourth try and then beat it, and it was just like felt comically easy. It was like there was like one attack that tripped me up, and once I figured it out, it wasn't hard at all.
Well, you also have to consider, like, your build may have had some influence on that, which is, I think, good in a sense. Like, I know I died to that move, not, like, lost the run, but, like, lost a life to that move on the Splatling, because the Splatling is slow as fuck. And that makes it harder to dodge that move. Whereas on other weapons, I had no trouble dodging that. So it makes some amount of sense. And yeah, the first time that he used that, it did completely trip me up. I was like, oh shit, like this isn't normal. I liked seeing that they had like boss implementations of some of the new specials as well. Because we've seen bosses do their versions of killer whales and whatever else in the past, but seeing Reef Slider and the super chump and shit, like that is cool. I like that they implemented and kept sort of that up. As a side note to that,
as a side order
to that, I don't actually love the weapon selection that for the palettes in the game. I don't know if you've like looked up a list of these.
No, I think I unlocked like 5 of them or something. I don't remember.
That makes some sense.
I only used the splatter shot. So
you piece of shit! You gotta change after every run. That's the rule.
Ugh, gross.
Yeah, I change the weapon every time. I think the dualies that you start with were like the second from last weapon that I used to clear the game. Because I don't like dualies generally.
Right, and they had the curling bomb as their sub, which is terrible.
That's another
in my
thing.
opinion.
Yeah. That's another thing with the just like the roguelike elements. There's like an actual currency, membucks. It takes place in the memverse. We had a whole conversation about mem cakes on the Octo expansion episode. If you'd like to revisit the mem saga. Verse. The memverse that we're in now. But
I remember.
Yeah, the vending machine, which is something that, like, to me exists only for after you have put lots of points into stuff. Because, like, I don't know if this is, like, an influence of just other roguelikes on me at this point, but, like, I know when I'm doing a roguelite to be like, okay, I put the things in that give me good economy, and then I can start putting in the things that actually improve the player, because the economy is going to carry you. The vending machines are weird because you can get at most like one kind of thing, and then you have like the ability to change your sub and special also at random, which feels really strange because I rarely would do it. The only times that I could think of were just like, like if you have a curling bomb and you're using it for mobility, but then you have enough chips that make your mobility better, like on the blaster or something, then maybe I'll swap it for something else. But more likely, I will just stop using the curling bomb because my gun is now good and I don't have to worry about it. But I don't know if that's just like not the right thing to do. I've now gone like 4 levels deep on this.
Yeah.
But my point was, you got to use a different weapon every time. And it's crazy to me to just do the same one over and over again.
Yeah. I don't know. I like getting good with one thing.
I like not doing
I
that.
switch to another thing, and then I suck and die in the first 5 stages, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
It just means that you're much better at the game than I am.
I mean, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
An accurate, true way. Come at me. But no, it's I thought that the variety of the weapons was, there are 2 splatter shots, just regular splatter shots, and like a blaster and a splatling, which were cool because those are the weapons that I predominantly use regular. But then there's a brush that's an octo brush and a roller, which are both really close range and feel limited, even though the roller was the first one that I actually beat the thing on. And then, there's like you get a charger, which feels horrible in this mode because it's like a horde mode, so you're just constantly surrounded.
Right.
And a stringer, which are the bows. So it's like, it feels like there's a lot of overlap in places where there are other weapons that they could have used, hypothetically.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they just kind of wanted one thing from each class.
Right.
And that's about it.
And I'm assuming you can unlock them for the main game. So
every time that
balancing concerns.
That's true, but the ones that you unlock for the main game are like just reskins of the defaults. So that's not really a thing that you have to worry about as much. I don't know. Right. Last thing that I have, the final palette is really weird, and I don't know if I agree with their balancing on it. It is, so Agent 8's palette is the last one that you get, and in Splatoon DLC tradition, 2-time tradition, the last thing that you do in the game has to be like way harder than everything else. And so for every hack you have active, it reduces the number of color chips you can put in by 6. And so normally you can have 30, and it will default to 6 at the lowest. So your options are just keep everything on and have 6 slots to put power-ups in, or turn everything off in order to have 30, and then you can have increments of 6. But honestly, once you're past like so many, it's like where it's difficult to judge, which is the good thing, is it's hard to judge like what the balance is. But they do not explicitly say this, like mechanically how it works. They say this palette is resistant to hacks, so the more hacks you have active, the less slots you'll have, which does not translate to if you have 5 of them, you cannot improve any more than that.
Right.
Which seems crazy to me. But yeah, I beat it on my first try by just not turning anything off and just steamrolling it. And it was not hard in any way. But there is a badge that you get for beating it with, I think, at most 4 hacks active. And I did this, I tried it 3 times, And the third time I died heartbreakingly in the final phase of the last boss. And I said, I don't care enough about the badge.
Splatoon,
Yeah, like this has taken too long as it is. It's definitely possible for me to do, but I just don't want to.
Right.
So I stopped there. So yeah, it's just a little strange. I wish that they were more explicit about how it changed, or I wish they had the cojones to just make it turn off all of your slots if you had 6 or more active. Like,
Yeah.
I think you should just have none, and you just go in with the shittiest version if you have hacks on. So, I don't know. That's my thoughts. I thought that it could have been cooler than it was.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of is it the heat system from Hades?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I feel like if it was fleshed out a little bit more and maybe communicated more clearly to the player, it could have been something like that.
Yeah. I think, well, that's sort of that's the rub. Like, I think that the main difference and the main thing that works here because of how the game is because it is not meant to be played for 400 hours like I did with Hades.
Yeah.
They don't have a system like that, which is to make you feeling overpowered play out for the entire game. Whereas, like, in this game, it's like you can have this one challenge mode.
Yeah.
So that's the one that you can really try on. And then they have, like, a thing you can unlock that makes it so that you get more pearls, which are the meta currency, but I read as Priz the first time that I saw it because it's it's capital P R lowercase L Z, and I was like Priz because there should be a vowel there. It's called Priz, and it didn't take me long to realize that it was pearls, but because it was the first thing I saw it as, I kept calling it Priz.
Okay.
Which is very stupid, and a point that I just had to mention. But there is, like, a challenge mode that you can unlock to, like, if you turn off all the hacks, you get, like, a huge payout at the end. But at that point, you're only spending it on gear. So, I don't know. I'm sure a sect of people who love this enough to keep going that far, but it ain't me.
Mm-hmm. Do we have Priz thoughts?
Are we gonna reverse? My Priz thoughts are no. No. Well, now I am gonna go with it.
Yeah. Why not?
Fucking. Do we have Priz thoughts?
So my Priz thoughts are, this was cool. I feel like I kind of wish it hadn't come out so long after I stopped playing the game. I think, like, if this sort of thing matters to you at all, and you haven't played it and for some reason have listened this far, I think it is, like, a little expensive for the amount of content on offer, and like the fact that, like, Splatoon 3 is, like, well past its prime. But if you don't care about that, it is a good time. I like that they went a little experimental. They gave us a new format. They made it a roguelite. I feel like the main campaigns, like, maybe it's because the Splatoon games have come out so quickly in succession, but, like, the story modes feel super samey. And I felt like this was, like, a nice breath of fresh air. So yeah, that's a big positive for me. I liked Pearl and Marina coming back. I like that Pearl looked like Weibo from Flubber. The fact that it's based off of the results of the last Splatfest from Splatoon 2 is really cool. Like, everything on offer here is really good for what it is. It's just, like, the fact that it is, like, more of a shorter proof of concept, though, leaves you wanting more. Like, you're like, oh man, if only this could have been, like, a more fleshed out full game. So, I mean, like, I guess that's really the biggest thing I have against it. So yeah, I hope to see more like this in the future. Like, I thought it was a good time.
Yeah, I think I very strongly agree with what you opened up with there. I think that this is such a cool thing that I do wish that it was like a little bit easier to access, because it is something that like is interesting for the sake of its own existence in a way that Splatoon 3, the third like game in a series, is not. Like, it is still a fun game and a game that I played for like 200, 300 hours or whatever, but it is on its face just an updated version of the Splatoon game. So to have something that uses the movement and shooting mechanics and puts them in an entirely different genre is pretty cool, and something that I do like and hope to see more of. Not necessarily another Splatoon roguelike, though I'd play it if it came out. But just like, I like this sort of experimentation that they're doing in the single player content, especially considering like how big of a hit Octo expansion was. I'm glad to see that they didn't feel beholden to the formula to just like make a sequel to that. So, yeah, it is cool. I think that that a lot of the roguelike mechanics end up working out really well, especially in something that is a sort of like smaller roguelike experience. This isn't something that's really meant to be played for hundreds of hours. It's a shorter thing. Which is something I always like to see when somebody takes like we talked about with Momodora being like a bite-sized version of a Metroidvania, another genre of game that usually is really huge. Roguelikes also are like that, and I like to see it when they get cut down a bit just to like experiment and see what's possible. So overall, I'm really positive on it. I had way more fun with it than I expected to, and it compelled me to play at least until I had finished the game. I'd say like negatives, like I felt like there was very little narrative momentum in comparison. How much do I care about Splatoon's narrative? I would say a medium amount at best. But it did seem like I don't know if Oct being Deadfish's real name was really like a big thing for the community, like if they were dying to know, and like her history with Marina. That's like a big thing in the game as you go on. But otherwise not really all that much happens. Whereas like the single player in Splatoon 3 is like a huge reveal to some extent if you're into it. So it felt like very small in scope, which I think worked in some ways and not in others. The end. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, if you notice, if you pick up your phone or click back onto the browser window where this is playing and check out that number next to the episode, this is episode 99 of NOCLIP Pocket. And while we are doing a theme of DLC, with episode 100 of Pocket coming up so soon, we have decided to go back to the roots, kind of in multiple ways, because we did Splatoon as the first episode of the podcast, and then the 99th episode of Pocket. That's like nothing, but like you could consider it something. But our first episode of Pocket was on the game Super Mario Land 2, The 6 Golden Coins. And so we are going to do Super Mario Land 1, no golden coins. 0 golden coins. So we hope that you'll come back to check that out. It is a special one. And until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our Twitter account, the email address, the Discord, where we talk about games and get suggested games, and JJ posts seemingly every cool new thing that he finds. And you can listen to all of our old episodes, including ones that we did on Splatoon, Splatoon 2, Splatoon 2 Octo expansion.
I should have you covered.
Yeah. Hades. Downwell. These are roguelikes. Golf.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3, because I mentioned it a couple times.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And soon you'll be able to listen to us talk about
Even more
Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And it
Future
won't be the road.
redeemed?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Future. You could listen to Time Splitters 3 Future Perfect
Why not?
after that one. Lots of exciting things.
Splat that like button
Fuck me.
in the comments.
In the comments section. List your favorite non-build in the comments section.
All right, I'm Googling Flubber Weebo.